came out with the decision to establish the Israeli National Cyber Bureau. Mr. Netanyahu, please.
תודה רבה. Thank you. תודה. אני יכול לדבר עברית? לא. Well, I expect that you have so many guests here from abroad who are establishing research centers here and business development. Maybe next year I'll be able to speak in Hebrew. This year I'll speak in English, and I'm delighted to see Stephen Mills from IBM and, of course, the mayor of Beersheba, my friend Rubik Danilovich, who's doing a superb job in developing Beersheba as not merely the cyber capital of Israel, but one of the important cyber centers in the world. And Rick Kaplan from IBM Israel, Professor Rivka Karmi from Ben Gurion University, such an important partner in this effort, and two people that are working in my office and are doing an exemplary job, Harel Loker, the Director General of the Prime Minister's Office, and Dr. Eviatar Matanya, who's the head of the National Cyber Bureau, and of course Professor Eugene Kendall, who is the head of the Economic Council, the National Economic Council. So I'm delighted to see all of you with all of us. And I want to talk about something that loomed large in my visit now in Davos. I described Israel as the innovation nation, and I didn't have to persuade people because they were persuaded. But I did say that in the world that we're entering now, that we're in and that is about to develop around us, the world of internet, the world of interconnectivity, we have great hopes and great dangers. We have great blessings, but also potentially a great curse. Maybe curses is the right word. We have to maximize the hope, minimize the danger. We have to maximize the blessings, minimize the curse. And I think Israel can help do both. When I talk about blessings, they're obvious. It's the spread of knowledge and information and choice, the potential increase in productivity, the advances in education, in healthcare, in commerce, and entertainment, the accessibility of things that were unimaginable, the libraries of all things instantly available at the tip of a fingertip. These are amazing things. The Internet of Things, the Internet of everything, the possibilities that are before us that are mind-boggling and only at their initial stage. We are at the, it's not a ski boot because, or rather a ski pole, sorry, hockey stick, because the hockey stick goes down before it goes up. This is just a perpetual upward slope, and the slope could increase and increase and increase. That's obvious. So we believe that there is a tremendous potential, positive potential, for in all these areas and probably many areas that we don't even envision today. We understand that. And here's what we're doing. The first thing we're doing is creating a digital Israel. We're connecting the country with fast fiber. That's a big project in order to have this access to everyone. And that's perhaps one of the ways of reducing social gaps, closing social gaps, canceling the whole idea of the periphery, what is called in Israel the periphery. This is a small country anyway, and we should be connected with transport, but ultimately it's the fast route of knowledge that can come to every home and give everyone an equal opportunity to partake in this future. We're doing that. We're also doing the impossible task of trying to get our government ministries into e-government. I won't talk about that. But that's the other part. But these things we're doing in a systemic way, and we believe it seizes the future. This is one aspect, just connecting everyone. The second thing is to create the environment that allows our entrepreneurs, that allows our technologists, our young men and women to create the devices, the products, the systems for this new world. Now Israel is exploding in these capacities. And at Davos I described 5 factors that enable Israel to be at least 50 times its relative size, I think more closer to 80 times its relative size. That means that we're like a country that would have about 500 million people in terms of our cyber capabilities. Now, where does that come from? And people constantly try to crack the code. Why does Israel have these things? I think there are 5 reasons that we have this concentration of talent. The first is security. Our military requirements that force us to have basically knowledge-based, a disproportionate number of knowledge-based people who work in national security. And this creates a critical mass that is constantly replenished, where we take the best and the brightest of our young people, government-funded, in a perpetual machine. So they're there for 3 years at least, many of them more, and they produce a different kind of army, an army of knowledge workers, and also select units, elite units of knowledge entrepreneurs. That is one part. I think it's an important contribution to our capabilities and also to our understanding of why Israel is so unique. But by itself, I don't think it would do the job. I think there are at least another 4 factors that have contributed to this special mix in Israel. The second is the fact that we have extraordinary research institutions and universities like the Technion, the Weizmann Institute, the outstanding universities of Israel. Ben Gurion is, I just stood next to Rivka Karmi of Ben Gurion University. The concentration of these exceptional institutions in a very small space, that's the third thing. Very small space creates the possibility of a hub. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody competes with everybody, but everybody also cooperates with everybody. So you have military, research, small space. Fourth, you have a special culture. Now this special culture is embedded in our people's history, but it's not widely understood. The Jewish people were the only people, to my knowledge, in antiquity who had universal literacy. Well, semi-universal, because fathers had to teach their children how to read, their sons how to read. That's part of our faith. They had to read the Bible, the Torah. And that carried the Jewish people as a unique people of the book, as we called it. The people of the book not only knew the book, they could read the book. And so the Jews were the literate people in antiquity and the literate people in medieval times. That helped in commerce, obviously. And when we got to the modern period and the Enlightenment and the walls of the ghetto fell down, roughly at the time of the French Revolution, this capacity of literacy, of universal literacy, spread into all the other disciplines. They were limited in the study of the Talmud to many areas of life, but not to the areas of sciences and many other areas. And when this burst, the capacity to be literate and the capacity to ask questions, which is what the Talmudic tradition did across Jewish communities. It never defined the end of knowledge. It never put an exclamation mark on truth. It was constantly questioning, expanding, growing, exchanging between communities, between great scholars and their students. It never ended. It was always iterative. This culture exploded when the walls of the ghetto went down and Jews came into physics, into chemistry, into mathematics, into all the fields of modern scientific endeavor. This same tradition, this same culture is part of us. It's deeply ingrained in our culture, in our thinking, in our traditions. So I think that's the fourth factor. And the fifth, well, that's the ultimate secret. The fifth is we really don't have a choice. I mean, we have to be good. To be here, we have to be very good. And in some cases, we have to be the best. So the combination of military or security requirements, research institutions, small space, culture, and the survival imperative have produced this special mix that makes Israel an outstanding society that produces outstanding capabilities in the field of cyber. There is one other element that I think is necessary, and without it, all of these 5 elements would not take off, and that's a pro-market environment. Unless you have that, the ingenuity in our people, the ingenuity of our young people cannot take root. They would simply go elsewhere. Some of them do. But if you can make them live here in the land of their birth, the place where they grew up, where they can raise their children, and actually, I was going to say make a buck, but you can say make a shekel. Shekel now is a very strong currency. Okay? That allows them to bring to fruition all these elements. And one of the things that we're committed to is to make Israel, continually make Israel good for business. Our local businesses, your businesses, there's not much distinction in the global economy. These are the elements that I think combine in Israel to give us tremendous potential. And the potential is there in all the areas that I described, in all the areas that you are dealing with. And therefore, it's not surprising that you have companies all over the place. We saw them here, IBM and Cisco and the cyber company Google and Yahoo, who I met in Davos, and Microsoft, and so many others, all the companies that I described, and many that I didn't. But that is the blessing part. Now comes the curse. There are at least 3 huge problems that we are tasked to solve in the internet age. The first is obvious and any government understands this, any economist understands this. The first is the problem of skill distribution. How do we get those who have the skills and the capacities and the talents to compete in this world have the future cut out for them? And it is one of the great challenges of modern governments to have their children, the children of the young girls and boys of the country from every realm, have the opportunity to partake in this. So if they have innate talent, you have to develop it. And in many ways, the internet revolution allows you to assure that in Israel, in every part of Israel, but in every part of the world. You can get to the people. But what happens with those who don't have the skill set? What happens with those who are less talented? How do we make them not fall behind? How do we give them a piece of this future? This is a great challenge. I'm not going to deal with it here, but I think it's challenge number 1. I think challenge number 2 is something that has not fully been addressed, but it's the question of the cultural change of instant gratification. Instant gratification becomes a habit. You want something, you click it, pretty soon you won't have to click it either, and you get it. But that's not how life works. That's how part of life works. And ultimately, the ability to defer gratification is the ability to make human advancement. And that becomes a specific problem in my line of work, because what you're dealing with is the proliferation of instant referendums. Now, I've just been to Switzerland. They have a peculiar system there. You know, they ask for referendums on many things. Not that many compared to what you do on the internet every 5 minutes or every minute or every second. And that's not how we govern traditionally. Ever since the collapse of the Athenian Assembly, which you had at least a large decision-making body of several thousand people who are sitting together and making these decisions, we learned that representative government and deferred decisions, deferred gratification, is a much more efficient way to govern. The internet is challenging that in fundamental ways. I'm not sure for the good, but it's a fact of life. It's here. We can no more change that than we would say that we would want to bring the horse and buggy back. Around Central Park, there are horses and buggies, but we don't use them for transcontinental transportation. We have a real challenge with instant referendums of the internet, both in the way we raise our children, but also in the way we govern. That is challenge number 2. But I've come to talk to you today about challenge number 3, which I think is the biggest challenge of all. The biggest challenge of all is how do we protect cyberspace. This is a huge issue. Suppose we weren't having this conversation now with a few hundred of you. Suppose I wanted to have this conversation with 2 of you. We clear this room and say, let's talk about it right here. We want some privacy. Well, there isn't any privacy. You know why? See this thing here? This computer? Porous. See this? Porous. See this? Porous. Anything that you see around you is perforated. And if it's not perforated, it can be perforated. The networks are exposed. The fact that we have networks, increasing complexity of networks, interconnectivity of networks, means that anything and everything can be exposed. The Internet of Everything means that everything can be violated. That's not something that we've had in history. We have kept human society free because we've had a society of secrets. Individuals have their own space. What is developing now in the world is a fundamental challenge to the idea of privacy and secrecy. There are some who, for obvious and legitimate reasons, extol transparency. And transparency has its virtues. But ultimately, free societies have limits on transparency. They guarantee individuals or collections of individuals the ability to decide to keep their secrets. For example, the whole idea of intellectual property. That is being fundamentally challenged. The privacy of individuals, fundamentally challenged. The sanctity of our bank accounts, fundamentally challenged. And this goes, obviously, into public systems, power grids, traffic nets, water systems, you name it. Everything can be violated. Everything can be opened up. Everything can be also sabotaged. This means that with the growth of internet and all the blessings that I described and the other problems that I mentioned, this is one fundamental problem that has to be addressed. I don't know if we can control it fully. We cannot. There will always be states and non-states, for example, organized crime, that will make it their goal to violate our systems. And there may always be an arms race between those who seek to attack and those who seek to defend or counterattack. But that doesn't mean that we cannot bring a series of norms to mitigate this problem. And that's the first thing that I want to say. This belongs to the realm not merely of companies that are discussing this issue here today, but it really should be the priority of top policymakers in government, in the states, but also in the leading non-state actors that are here. I said to one of the journalists that accompanied me to Davos, I said that I had met in the morning with the leaders of, representatives of great powers, Secretary of State of the United States, the Foreign Minister of China, number 3 in Google. Right. But that's a reality. And the top policymakers, state and non-state, have to get together. I wouldn't try to do this in an inclusive way, so it's the UN, the new UN of the internet. It's not going to work. Because some unprincipled elements would be in that room and they would distort this effort. I think you need a coalition of the willing, of the leading states that have prowess in this area, and the leading companies to sit down and discuss it. It's not a perfect forum, but it's the best forum we can devise to get the best practices and the best defenses that we need. In this, I think Israel is unquestionably a leading power. Disproportionate to our size for the reasons I mentioned, with great talents and great resources. We have decided to put these resources together in a coherent way, and we have structured a national cyber bureau I've asked Dr. Netanyahu to lead it. Is he here? Where are you? Stand up, stand up. That's him. You can find out about Aviv. And the basic idea that we have is to put together a consortium, if you will, of our security arms, our university and research capabilities, and business together. We think that we can turn this curse into a blessing because we know that people need this. Everybody needs cyber protection. Everybody. Every individual needs it. So we have created a special organization to try to mesh together these elements, obviously to afford cyber defense to our critical systems, to the country, but also to see how we can share with others our experience and our talents. This requires a decision which I've made to relax or reduce some of the constraints that we have traditionally put on such business. The government usually puts constraints on things that have implications for national security, but we have consciously made a decision to lower these constraints because we're taking a gamble, if you will, on the growth of these partnerships, entailing some risks, but willing to do so in order to get a much bigger gain. Bigger gain for Israel, bigger gain for these companies, also bigger gain for you, and also to advance the cooperation that is required to get us to be able to control this jungle, to cut it down to size. We can only beat paths in the jungle if we do it in a collaborative effort, and we're prepared to do that. That is also driving the growth. Everything that I've just described is driving the growth of hundreds of cyber companies, hundreds of them, in Israel. About half of them didn't exist 3 or 4 years ago, and the number is growing rapidly with major investments taking place, and I'm delighted that some very important companies are doing this. They know the Israeli companies that have dealt with this issue, most notably, of course, Checkpoint, but many, many, many others, and companies like RSA and SafeNet and PayPal and others are here. We welcome you, the fact that you are here, and EMC, of course, I described before. These are all developments that we think can expand, and we want to assure that this expansion takes place on a grand scale. This is not a flash in the pan. This is not a 1 year or 2 year effort. We view this as a great effort, a great partnership between government and business for the next decade, possibly 2 decades or 3 decades. It will grow, it will change as well. But this is something that we're committed to on a multi-year basis, and it's not something that we're going to let go of. Now, coincidentally, we're also using this in a very conscious way to realize, shall we say, my updated vision of Ben-Gurion's vision. Ben-Gurion always wanted to develop the Negev. And he basically believed that by calling people to go there and by having subsidized businesses, in those days textile businesses, that would do it. Didn't quite get the job done, but the dream was still there. What we're doing now is something else. What we're doing is turning Beersheba and the whole Negev into the cyber region of Israel and I think of the Eastern Hemisphere. And the reason we're doing that is because we have an excellent university there with thousands of graduates each year in these relevant fields. And I'm falling back on something that I remember from my days as a student at the Sloan School at MIT. I lived on campus, and the campus had very nice modern buildings in it, IMP designed buildings, and yet right across the student dorms where I lived, on the other side of the street, there was a big warehouse, ugly, opaque windows with bars on them. And I asked, what is this? And they said, well, that's something of the US government, CIA or NSA, something like that. It's the first time I heard those words, those letters, and I said, ah. And then, of course, what you had there, the government was putting its top information effort in the heart of a university and then allowed this to expand into businesses. And that's how you had Route 128 and Route 495, and all of you know this example. That's exactly what we're doing now in Beersheba. Israel already has these concentrations, but we're deliberately creating exactly this model in Beersheba. We have moved significant units of the Israeli Defense Forces to the south. We're putting our National Cyber Command smack the University of Beersheba. We have a railway line leading from Tel Aviv with a train station that literally you disembark on that point in the campus. So you have our security outfits, our university, and an industrial park all within walking distance of 100 yards. That's called a cyber hub. It's a big thing. It reflects our commitment to continue to develop Israel with your partnership, and not merely as an innovation nation, but also as a main contributor, global contributor, to something that we all want to see. We want to see cyberspace that is safe, prosperous, and free. And we hope that you will be part of it with us. So my parting message to you is this: when you think cyber, think of Israel, and all the rest you can go to Rubik Danilovich. He's waiting there for you, the mayor of Beersheba. Thank you very much. Thank you.